Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. This is episode 30 of the podcast, and today we're going to be talking about a salary cap in the MLB. Is that a possibility? Is that something that should happen? We're going to get to all that. And a little bit more, we're going to talk about the Dodgers, everybody's favorite team, because that's all we can talk about. When you talk about
I
salary
thought it
cap
was the Yankees.
and the Yankees,
I thought it was the Mets.
you kind of got to talk
I thought it
about
was New
salary
York.
caps. New York, any of the
I
big
thought it was
market
also
teams.
Boston.
Any of the big market teams
We
that you're
talk about.
tired of hearing of,
Wait a
that's what
minute,
we're
are
going to
we
talk
talking
about
about the
on
We're
more.
going to
Athletics
talk
this
more
week?
about them.
Wait, we might even mention the Athletics. You just never know. We'll have to see. Episode 30.
I know what team we won't mention. The Pirates.
Well, we'll mention them. Trust me. We'll find
Oh
a way
man,
to
you're
sneak
you're
them
gonna
in
hate
there.
my lower third later.
We'll sneak them in there. As you can hear already, we got the whole crew here once again. Thank you, by the way, for all the love and support recently. We have been slowly gaining subscribers as we close in on 100, which is awesome. So
Whoa!
thank you very much for that. Yeah, I know we're
Hey,
getting
let's give it up for number 100!
the big
Yay!
100.
No, you got to do that when we reach episode 100.
That's true. Which, God, I don't know if I can do this for 70 more episodes with you guys, but we'll see.
Hey, you've
That's
made
all
it
right.
through.
You're a shitty host.
Actually,
Anyway.
made it through like 25.
That's true. All right, so let's get into this right away by talking about the Blake Snell signing to start off, because I think when this signing happened, there was kind of an uproar on social media. Of course, because the Dodgers made the signing and everybody was talking about the salary cap. That comes up again. And I think the salary cap conversation really comes up every offseason when the big teams do continue to spend money.
Well, because what else are they gonna do? Just sit and do nothing?
Exactly. So let's briefly, as like a side note, talk about this Blake Snell signing, because I do think it is worth mentioning. It is probably the biggest signing that we've had so far in this season. So, Blake Snell, or excuse me, for the Dodgers, we kind of talked about them in one of our other episodes about, all right, would they try to bring back Jack Flaherty? What do they do to complement Yamamoto and Otani? Well,
Got that answer, didn't we?
we answered it. They got a former Cy Young winner, a guy who really turned it on at the end of the year last year, and this time Scott Boras didn't mess around. He got him signed early, and maybe he'll have a better start to this year. So,
You think Snell was like, "Hey, Scott, I'm tired of waiting. You screwed me over.
Well,
I
if
didn't
you
get
seen what
going until
happened,
May."
if you seen what happened to Jordan, then I wouldn't want to do that either. I'd want to get
Scott, the first offer that comes across my desk, saying it.
Yeah, but it might have been the A's. I mean, heck, they just signed Severino. Might have been like, I need the first offer. It's the A's. I'll take the second offer.
It's the Pirates. I need the
Hey,
offer.
hey.
Hey, you did bring up the Pirates.
Not nice. Well, I mean, what do you make of the signing? Obviously, it's great for the team, but I mean, that's just such a scary rotation.
Snell is such a weird player to talk about, though, because he is so up and down. He'll have years where he is a Cy Young. He's 1-2, and last year he was a Cy Young for nearly half of the calendar year, and for him, really 2/3 of it. But then he has years where he is absolute garbage and his ERA is over 5. He doesn't have any control. And he's always been someone that's been weird with length. I mean, yes, he had a no-hitter last year, but so much of his career was with the Rays. And he was pitching with the Rays motto in mind, where he basically went 2 times through the order and that was it. So he's not quite, I felt like, built up to a long, like what you would consider as the goal for a pitcher or starting pitcher, at least what I would consider the goal of a 6-7 innings guy, though nowadays it doesn't matter. But all that being said, he is joining, as you said, Otani and Yamamoto, and the Dodgers are going to have, again, on paper, one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. You just got to wonder if everyone's going to stay healthy, and Snell is another question mark. So it's like, this is the perfect signing for the Dodgers because it encompasses everything the Dodgers have with their pitching in one player. And I mean, this year their pitching got injured and looked like it was going to be absolutely nothing, and they won a World Series. Godspeed to you. I don't know what the heck's going to happen, and at this point you might as well just be throwing darts at a board with your eyes closed.
I got 2 words as to why Blake Snell got this contract.
Scott
Cy
Boras.
Young.
That's
2 years ago.
I mean, when you have those two words next to your name, not once but twice, as a pitcher, you can basically write your
Why
check.
didn't he get this contract last year then, which was literally after his Cy Young year?
I
well.
think because Scott Boras screwed up big time.
So the
So
answer is Scott Boras, not Cy Young, and it's Scott Boras.
Yeah,
He doesn't want to screw up 2 years in a row.
Blake, we're signing the first offer that comes across my desk. It's
We already did this joke. It's old.
It's the Rockies. All right. When the Dodgers
Apparently we're in
call,
30.
we answer.
Look, I mean, I feel like for the Dodgers, this is another situation where they defer some of the contract, and it's going to be interesting to see
You
what
don't
the
need a
Dodgers
salary
look
cap.
like.
All your money is deferred.
Right. Who needs a salary cap when you pay only like $5 a year?
Right.
Just abusing the system, though. That's the thing.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. So yeah, I mean, I feel like for the Dodgers, it's just like obviously if a guy like that is out there, and now you have some insurance, I guess, if you get another injury to the top of the rotation. I mean, Glassnow will be back. Obviously, Yamamoto, they have Snell, Otani will be pitching. They're gonna have some guys that I guess they're gonna potentially have to make decisions with because, they have some of those like they'll obviously need a fifth starter, right? But then you'll kind of have some guys that had a lot of potential, like Dustin May being one of them.
Do they need to go after Sasaki?
Oh, I mean, at
No,
this
they're
point, they
done.
don't.
They seem done. They have like 3 or 4 guys that could be a number 5 starter.
Yeah.
So
You mean they're done in terms of pitching?
They're done in the sense that they don't need more starting pitching.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think
I was going to say, let's be honest. If Juan Soto says, "Hey, I want to go to the Dodgers," they're not going to be done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean,
Juan Soto says he's going to the Dodgers. I might just back out of this baseball season and watch box scores on my phone and just be like, "That's it. All right, you know what? Give him another ring. Let's go to 2026."
At least there's the American League. Yay!
Yeah,
there's other guys.
Let's watch the White Sox all day. That'll be fun.
Please go to the White Sox.
Show in that itself,
actually,
okay?
you bring up a good point. It might actually be entertaining.
We should do top 10 best White Sox moments of 2024.
That would be a very short list. We would not get 10 great moments. That's for sure.
I didn't say great. I said best. And I didn't mean best in terms of quality of play.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that.
Just call them 10 moments. Just 10 moments.
The 10 moments of all time.
The moments the White Sox went full White Sox.
That's 2.
Per usual, getting off track here.
No, we're not.
But honestly, I'm kind of cool with transitioning this right into the conversation about the salary cap.
White Sox salary cap, perfect bridge.
Yes, I mean, exactly. There is absolutely. I mean, the team spends a ridiculous amount of money. It's only fair that we bring up the salary cap.
Hey,
now.
they need to be in this conversation because if there's a salary cap, there's a salary floor. Are they deep in the basement?
Yes, if you
they're under the floorboards.
Will Johnson 2024. If you have a ceiling, you have to have a floor. As you are looking at the
2028. Come on, we're done with 2024.
The floor. You are looking at the floor.
This is the floor.
Yeah.
Welcome. By the way, you see a couple names on there that kind of just tick you off a little bit because, the Guardians being on there, Milwaukee, and those teams are consistently making the playoffs. The Gritty Tigers, obviously the Orioles, but
I mean, this is still this off. We're looking the next year, so
right.
all these are going
the Rays are also not surprising there.
Yeah.
Here, Bobby, can you go to 2024s instead, at least for this for now? See a little bit more fleshed out when we start comparing.
Okay, so there you go. I mean, still
got a little bit higher for Oakland, as you can see. They
Oakland. Who's Oakland?
Oh, sorry.
$62 million. Heck, the contract they just signed Severino for is a third of that.
Yeah, I mean
I do love for this list though. You have like Baltimore, BAL. You have Chicago, CHW. Then there's F. F.
That's what they're going to be going by. It is funny though. Like it's almost like the Athletics knew that there was going to be a conversation about salary cap, and they're like, "All right, we got to sign somebody because there's gonna ultimately be a floor. So let's sign this guy who's in his
hold on.
30s.
There's
And
always a conversation about salary cap.
yeah, there always is.
It's
But
every year.
John, I was making a joke. This is how comedy works. I mean, I'm a
Zinger, pow.
exactly. You look. I think that you
Then
look
make your
at
joke funny.
you look at the Dodgers, you look at the Mets, you look at the Yankees, and there's always going to be that conversation about a salary cap. And look, I'll ask John. I'll ask you straight up. I mean, we'll kind of answer the question and then go into reasons why. Do you believe that the MLB should have a salary cap?
Yes.
Yes, resoundingly. Yes. What?
I need to switch ears now. Ow.
Will, how about you?
I'm not against the salary cap either. Unless,
If
depending
you
on how we
get-
start talking about stuff. I mean, I'm
you
in
put
the
in-
top end of it, but I think based on what we were talking about pre-show, whatever a salary cap would be for baseball won't affect me too much being a Phillies fan.
Or
if you
it's all about
put in a cap, you have to put in a floor. That's the thing, and that's how you get
That's my
competitive
quote.
balance.
yes, that's his
God
quote.
damn it.
We've already quoted
Pay
him.
me.
How about the producer who is a sports fan of not just the MLB but other sports? Having seen how it works in those sports, how do you feel about a salary cap in baseball?
You need one. Because it's just going to be the same story. I mean, the Athletics have just been a tragedy for most of their
I almost feel
time
like
in Oakland.
you need the cap, not again because of what we've already said, not just because of stopping teams from spending tons and tons of money and whatever. It's to get the teams that aren't spending any money to spend more so that they are
Yeah.
more competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the weird thing about this conversation that we kind of alluded to this beforehand is that, like, yeah, obviously everyone knows the cap's the problem, right? Because the Dodgers are getting away with literally murdering everybody on the street.
That's still
And
slightly
that
different because of the
being it.
deferrals.
Yeah, but part of the issue too, and Tyler I know has, the opinion out of all of us here with our fandoms about a floor. Because if an owner is not going to spend the money that they need to create a winning team, then why in the world are fans ever going to show up to continue to support that team? That's the
that
main
happened
issue.
in
The
Oakland.
salary cap, and well, I know that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
you saw how empty the stadium would be most of the time for the Athletics, but as soon as they threatened to kind of pull out, which obviously they ended up doing, then you started to see the seats fill up, which was more of a protest more than anything. I obviously recognize that, but it's something to keep in mind too. I mean, like, most fans, I gotta imagine, for the Athletics had to have been tired of it by that point, with just no money coming in. Something had to be done, and this, unfortunately, was just the logical conclusion of that whole saga.
yeah, and again, as we've already alluded to, you maybe the conversation is more about should teams be spending money over teams being restricted on spending money. But I think, you kind of look at the big four in sports with baseball, hockey, basketball, and football, and the other three sports have that salary cap, and it's obviously vastly different with how the contracts work compared to baseball contracts, in general. Um, on a money standpoint alone, I just the money that professional baseball players make, even like average baseball players, is crazy. I mean, the best player in the NHL right now is making as much as like a platoon bat on the Giants. It's absolutely insane. Excuse me, but let's look at this from a perspective of entertainment, because I think there's always this. Actually, let me backtrack. So the big thing with a salary cap is making the playing field even. It's not fair that these big market teams can spend all this money and spend on anybody they want and not have any repercussions, and the smaller market teams can't keep up. Um, I guess, like, what's your guys' opinion on that? Like, is it, I guess, a good thing for baseball to have competitive balance, or should it stay the way it is? Well, I'll go to you first.
yes, it should be balanced a little better. I mean, so to try to visualize this better, I feel like I need to go into a little bit of the conversation we had ahead of time pertaining to some of the numbers that we'd be looking at potentially if MLB is going to implement a salary cap, which, if being honest, the players union will never allow it. So this is all hypothetical and nonsense and fantasy. But for there were two teams this year that spent over 300 million. There were three teams that spent over 250, and then there were 10 teams that spent over 200 million. And looking at the other big three sports and hockey, basketball, and football, was it basketball? They spent the floor was 90. The team had to spend 90% of what the
NFL.
salary cap was.
NFL.
Well, the NFL was salary was 90% over 4 years.
Sorry. Yeah, you're
the
right.
NBA was 90% in 1 year. NFL was team had to spend 90% of the salary cap over a span of 4 years, and for the NHL, it was basically about 2/3, 75% or something. I mean, for this year, it was like an 88 salary cap, and the floor was 68 or 65. So you also have to think about that from a baseball perspective and what's the middle ground and whether they would change that. Knowing baseball, they would change it. By bringing the salary, by saying a hypothetical 250 million salary cap, you'd probably look at about somewhere between 100 and 150 million, being baseball, wanting to drop it lower than 75% of what teams would have to pay. It would make it better because now you're requiring nearly a third of the teams in baseball to be paying more and having to bring in better talent, and therefore it would make games more competitive, more interesting. There are teams that would still probably tank and find a reach around, and they would be trying to sign a lot of older players. John, I'm going to slap you. But they'd be signing a bunch of older players to maybe tank in that sense, so they're required to therefore reach the cap and not perform well. However, depending on some names you bring in, it still might bring in more people than what they're doing at times right now, barely spending any money. So I feel the cap is necessary for the floor more so than the ceiling. Talking about the Dodgers and how they refer or defer money, that's a completely different conversation.
Look, I guess that's my whole thing, right? Like, John, I'll pose this question to you. You're an Oakland fan, or you're a Pirates fan, and I think that the Pirates. Are you laughing at there's Oakland fans out there?
No, I'm laughing at you, named John, an Oakland fan. Like, gee,
no. I mean, in a hypothetical situation,
I know
already a small market.
It was just you were just flat out, John. You're an A's fan.
Like, no. I apologize. Rephrase the question. Look, there's
fighting words.
There is a almost $250 million difference from what they spent at the bottom of the league to what the Mets spent at the top of the league. Like, how, from an outsider's perspective of baseball, do you look at that and go, man, this is going to be, like, this is good for the league? Like, it's not.
When you say an outsider's perspective, are you talking like
somebody
that knows the game?
Fan. No,
okay.
Someone that doesn't know who Livy Dunn is.
That, again, we're reusing jokes that we use pre-show. My goodness. What are we doing here? But no, like, I just feel like kind of when you tie this into entertainment, it's like if I'm somebody who watches basketball per se, right? And my friend's like, hey man, you should watch baseball. It's a great sport. And I'm like, well, the reason I don't like baseball is because there's no salary cap and it's not competitive. I feel like it's hard to have an argument when, again, there's a $250 million difference between what one team is spending and what another team is spending. Like, and I know that's the most extreme case, but, you know, even like looking at the Mets compared to like the 20th team, there's still a $200 million difference.
So in this hypothetical world in which this conversation takes place, where the reason somebody doesn't watch baseball is because they don't spend money. Not because they make too much money, but that they don't spend money. Okay.
Or both.
All right, or both. Then if that's the case, then what I have seen is I don't like baseball. I don't like athletes because they get paid absorbent amounts of money. All right, we're going by that, but going by that conversation because that's more likely. What you then have to say is it's not necessarily about the money, it's about the entertainment, it's about the quality of the athlete that money is behind. And yeah, you have to think about that, but that limits what the smaller teams can afford because you have guys like Juan Soto, like Shohei Ohtani that are superstar athletes, that are amazing athletes who can pitch, hit, run, make diving catches in not in Juan Soto's case, but other cases. Um, but you know, you have these superstar athletes that get paid this money, so yeah, there is that. But it's from an entertainment standpoint, that comes down to where we're stuck, which is the markets. And what the NFL does is that they have a collective, uh, basically for lack of a better term, pot for national TV deals that every team gets a share of, and it evens the playing field. Whether or not they spend that is, up to the owner, but it becomes more even in the NFL with that. Honestly, I just thought of a way that we can fix this issue of how to get this immediate competitive balance, but also have what the Dodgers have been abusing, in my opinion, have been abusing with these contracts. So,
I mean, but I feel well. Sorry to cut you off. I'm just thinking like what they're doing is technically legal,
yeah, it's
but
legal
it's frowned upon.
by okay, it's legal by the letter of the law, but not the
Yes.
spirit of the law.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the problem. So, in order to make it legal by the spirit of the law, what we could do is you have a salary cap, have a salary floor. Now, you set those numbers, but for for athletes, what you can do, and this also gives players a bit of a how do I put it? How do I put this? It gives them almost sort of like a pension, have them defer uh, a lot of their immediate contracts so that you get under the cap and over the floor. And then what you can do is pay them on the back end for X amount of years and help. And that's how you use the deferring to make this a competitive balance here.
I feel like that opens up other problems, though.
I just want
But all the
I just want
baseball
the Shohei
contracts are
contract.
guaranteed.
I just
Yeah.
want the Shohei contract to penalize the Dodgers 70 million per year based on luxury tax and not 45 because of whatever how the deferred money /
Yeah.
whatever makes it look in the eyes of the whatever
But
for the state of the luxury tax.
yeah, well,
I mean that makes sense though. Like if you're going to defer a contract, there should be a higher penalty on, or not a higher penalty, but there should be some penalty to doing that. I guess. Like
Yeah, because it lessens the overall view of the contract. So therefore, from baseball standpoint, it will lower whatever the luxury tax, or how much of that contract affects the luxury tax.
right.
So that's step one for that, and then step two is figuring out where the ceiling is that can bring down some of the higher teams that are spending tons and tons of money every year, or will just continue to rise, and then raise the floor so the teams that don't want to spend everything have to spend at least some to be competitive, and then we find that middle ground.
I mean, there is no floor, so there is that.
Should be is our point.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is that you have in order to have the balance, you have to set a floor, you have to set a ceiling.
Right. That's what I was saying.
And
no, that's what I was saying.
At the very least, you have to make the luxury tax actually mean something. Like have it be a penalty. Like
it should be a hard cap.
You lose a draft pick.
I mean, right now
something.
If we want, I mean, isn't it the NBA does a soft cap, and
Yes.
then if you go beyond that, then you like there's certain penalizations of players you can't sign for certain reasons depending
Yeah.
on what
Yep.
apron you are above it. But I mean, for MLB, when it comes to the luxury tax, the only tricky thing I'll say about that is that it was renegotiated, only like 3 off seasons ago. And part of that penalization system, besides the tiers part, was for each year you're in over the luxury tax, you pay more. And so therefore, we're only a few years into that. So we're not seeing what could be hypothetically some more drastic penalties for teams such as the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, Phillies, whoever. And that's still going to take a few more years before we even see if that is a possibility of really affecting how those teams
It's not
operate.
going to.
I mean, in the short answer is it's not, but
MLB is not
we're not
strict
quite
enough.
there yet. No, yeah, it's the players' union is going to be the big thing that
Well,
holds
that's
that
the
back.
problem is that the players' union, honestly, is it's the best union to be a part of in the world, probably, because
No, it's the umpires' union because no one gets
Because-
That's
penalized.
true.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. But all right, the second best union to be a part of in the world, because let's be honest, whenever they don't like something, all right, we're striking, you know, and the owners have to blink first because they're losing money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything is
Yeah.
negotiated here. It's negotiated there. The players' union is one of the best unions in the world, and it's it's just ridiculous. And this will never get solved because of it.
On the idea of deferred contracts, I mean, I guess like having that luxury tax is the simplest way to kind of combat it. Or excuse me.
But they're not enforcing it.
No, but I'm saying in a
Well,
hypothetical,
they
is
are
it,
technically enforcing it, but like we said, it just does not have the effect that you would think.
or that it should. Like I feel like
Right.
is that the way to punish teams that are doing this? Because now this is going to open a door, and other teams are going to try to do it. And I don't know if teams will do it as effectively, but
I mean,
the big teams are going to try it.
some teams are going to try it. It's really going to come down to the mindset of the player because, I mean, yes, LA is a huge like landing spot for a player because of the talent on the team, the fact that they're going to be competitive every year for a World Series for the next decade, and you get to play with the greatest baseball player on the planet and arguably in history.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of players that don't like the fact that they have to defer money, and coming to a team that is a bigger market that does not defer to money does have an appeal to it. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be the ultimate solution. It would be more of a thing if all of a sudden it looked like luxury tax was starting to affect higher teams that were spending more than they realized, and that was the way around it. But that's far enough in the future that I have no idea whether that's truly going to be the case. But I don't see that as kind of a this is what everyone's going to do type of mentality.
I mean,
here's the thing: is that I feel like this deferral is not as enticing if it comes from, say the Pirates, because and like Pittsburgh or Oakland, for example. Just because, think about it this way: Shohei Ohtani can make more money in brand deals and shooting commercials and everything like that.
Fluke incident.
Well, yes, but he's in LA. There's that market that he can take advantage of that a lot easier than, say, I don't know, O'Neal Cruz in Pittsburgh can.
Yeah, what the hell? What the hell is this?
And like if you go to like the Yankees or the Mets, you can take advantage of that the same thing because it's New York. So you know taking advantage of those opportunities that you'll be given because you play for the Yankees in New York, or you play for the Dodgers in LA. Obviously that doesn't extend to the Angels because they're kind of little brother out there, but that's not the point. The point of the matter is that if you can make more money, then yeah, sure, I'll help you out. I'll defer my money so you pay me till I'm 85.
I just don't believe players in general are for that mindset. I mean,
I don't think every player is, because not every player gets picked up by the Dodgers or the Yankees.
Yeah. Oh,
so
sure.
you're saying if the Dodgers were to offer X player, that then they would accept it because
I'm sure that it's part of negotiations saying, hey, we need you to defer and we can sign you, but you're playing for the Dodgers in LA. Like, think about what that'll do for you outside of baseball and how much money you can make in brand deals and brand recognition. I mean, look at Shohei with New Balance.
I mean,
like
honestly,
you said,
though,
he was
not a
kind of
sponsor.
he's the unicorn in that situation too. I mean, yes, we want to have the Dodgers be penalized at the fullest capacity possible, but he also offered to have 68 million deferred each year of his contract because of the fact that he had all these brand deals and had all this money coming in for the foreseeable future, and two, when he probably retires, when his contract ends, he can get out of California and get all the money basically without the tax.
That's
or
true too.
much minimized. So therefore, he'll get more bang for his buck in the long haul. He's the person that I feel like in the end is looking at this at a longer perspective in a very smart way. But I also see that there's the player that's like, I want to use all the money I'm making now for reasons that they have that it doesn't matter if I know or don't know. So I think that plays more into their choices in the end, and also because like an East Coast thing is that they don't have the deferrals that I'm aware of that the like California does, so therefore you can play for the Mets, Yankees, or Phillies, and you get a big market team without having to defer that money, so therefore you can keep it all right away.
Sure. I will say, to John's point, I mean, like, Tommy Edman is kind of an example. Now, I know he's a decent player, but with him, I think even some of his contracts deferred, and it's like,
dude, yeah, because it's in California.
Well,
that's what they do.
But I understand that point. But also to John's point, it's like, hey, look at this team that we can build around you. Look at the pieces that we can continue to get when you take a deferred deal. Like, I think that is enticing to some players. I do.
Well, I think it's also enticing the outside perspective of that as well.
Yeah, if players want to sign there, sure.
I think the more enticing thing is seen in recent years in the offseason is, instead of that idea about deferring, it's taking longer deals for slightly less in the annual value because they're getting what they want. It's just longer. A team would rather pay 25 million a year instead of 30. So you get like a 13-year contract instead of a 10-year.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the ultimate question I have. Are the Dodgers a problem?
Well, I think they're so to make a comparison, if there's any NHL fans out there.
No, move on.
I was gonna say, I know this won't resonate with any of you, and I know somebody on this show can't really speak on it.
Damn it.
But the Tampa Bay Lightning were a team that for years and years in their kind of heyday, their prime, were really like teetering on that line of, is this legal? Or, I mean, this is really shady, but they somehow made it legal. And I feel like obviously that's kind of the route the Dodgers are going down. What they're doing is legal, but as John said earlier, it's legal by law, but kind of
by the letter of the law, but not the spirit.
Right. Excuse me. I needed to get that quote correct in its entirety.
Put on a t-shirt. That's our 15th t-shirt.
I think
nice.
I think
our marketing team's doing great.
Production.
We have so many t-shirt designs at this point. I mean, if we ever make it big, we are going to
check our Christmas catalog 2025. You might see some.
We send out magazines like the old Toys R Us ones that you can circle the pictures.
Yeah, because we're in the lingo.
Memories, baby. I love it.
I need the Hank Aaron one made first, though. That is
yes.
First.
If I'm not getting that this year for Christmas, I am leaving this show.
I will.
You think we have the budget for that?
I'll beg the producer, not you.
Okay, good.
I will say, like, to your point though, John, like, do you think other teams are kind of taking exception to this, like seeing what the Dodgers
should? They should. I'd be pissed. I mean, like, we can't take advantage of this. You're in the biggest market in the league, and you're taking advantage of this. Like, this is just not fair. Like, and that's the problem. That is the problem here. It's not fair. There's not a competitive edge. You have to. This puts more pressure on teams like the Orioles, teams like the Pirates, teams like the Rays, teams
I
like
had $1 for every time you said Pirates.
Yeah, and you said we weren't gonna mention that in this episode.
No, this one's actually a positive one. It puts more pressure on them to draft well and to hit on every single prospect they have. Meanwhile, I can't even name a Dodgers prospect that has been
Corey
called
Seager,
up.
Cody Bellinger, Will Smith.
No, that they have.
Kershaw.
Relax.
That they have right now, you smartass.
Andy Pages.
All right.
Was Michael
That's
Grove one of them?
not-
Bobby Miller. Knack. Who else we got?
All guys,
right.
all pitchers,
The
by the way, that
big-
will be in AAA because they signed 4 amazing free agents. So relax.
The big
there.
names that they have are not guys that they drafted and that they built. It's guys that they bought. And that's
in a
the
way,
problem.
Los Angeles did build Ohtani, just not
My
the.
God, this guy, fight with the wall, would you? My God.
First of all,
Jesus.
the United States didn't even build Ohtani, okay?
No.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you're right in the sense that other teams look at that and like, all right, well, what the hell are we even supposed to? How can we even compete against this? But if you're, dude, that's so messed up. That's so messed up.
Why?
That's so messed up. I'm being bullied. Is everybody seeing this?
Wow,
This is
just
bad.
Why?
God,
What context?
just to be an asshole. That's why.
I wanted to put that up when John started talking about the Pirates because I figured he was going to go for a while. So I was just going to put that up and put the text over it that said not related whatsoever. But I didn't get a chance to.
That's why people want to go to the Pirates and why they have a hole at first base that will never be filled.
Yeah, because that's
the curse.
That's what the coaches teach them, I guess.
Tag the guy next time; it'll hurt more.
So it's. I think let's look at this in an unbiased view, and I know it's going to be extremely hard to do this. Piggybacking off of what we just talked about.
Big market, low market, go.
Should large market teams be punished by smaller market teams because they can't competitively compete?
Again, we're going full Lord of the Flies. Okay. Yeah, sure. Honestly, genuinely, I think that there should be a penalty if you go over the luxury tax like these big market teams are doing.
So
you
is
have
the
to
fix
have
then,
a backbone, Manfred.
Is the fix then? And I don't know what's more realistic, a salary cap or a much harsher.
I mean, if
luxury
we're gonna
tax?
if baseball's gonna live by a tier system the way they are, then it should. I mean, it should obviously grow in intensity and how much of the punishment is as you go. It could be like the first if the baseball is going to have a luxury tax, or as way they put it now, luxury tax. I mean, we want to call it a salary cap or whatever. Just kind of this is where the point is this is the most you can pay before you start getting penalties against you.
Yeah.
If there is that in any type of sport, you would feel like, yes, from an unbiased standpoint, there should be a penalty and it should get worse based on length or the tier or whatever. For baseball, it could be where the first tier has to do with money. The next tier could do with like a drafting a prospect. Third one, you have to figure something out because I'm running out of ideas as I talk right now.
At this point, it almost feels like the Dodgers and Yankees, they don't even need to have a draft. They don't need to do that because they can just buy the best free agents. It almost feels like the draft is only necessary for smaller market teams.
Yeah, I mean, I do think
it is definitely more important for smaller market teams because that's how they're going to build a young dynasty. Is they have to.
I mean, honestly, take the Orioles for example. Now I know they're not. I would say they're a medium-sized
They're a
market.
low to mid market. They're mid
Yeah.
Atlantic. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but like,
Wow, we went up. Cool.
look what they did.
Hey,
though.
you've
I
gotten
mean,
better recently, and now the Yankees are mad at you. So yeah, you have gone up a little.
but look,
Take that, Yankees. Suck it, New
can
York.
can every team
Keep spending your
rely
money.
on what
We didn't need to know
Baltimore
money.
did? I mean, Baltimore
No.
Baltimore hit on everything. Like, I mean, Baltimore is the exception to the rule because
How are
Correct.
they the exception?
they hit on every
I
prospect.
mean, which part of the rule? Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll tell you why.
It took
I'll tell you why.
Took like 2 different rebuild sections.
But
It
I'm
wasn't
saying,
a slam
like,
dunk in the first place.
no,
No,
but
I would say one. They
I'm
weren't
saying,
trying
like,
previously.
I'm saying, but like, look at the roster they built. It's all homegrown players, and I just don't think it's realistic for teams to do that and put a team as good as they have on the field. Is what I'm saying. Like, yes,
No,
you
but
can
that's
draft
the
good
goal. That's what
players,
they
but
strive for. That's what
I
they
mean,
have to do with the
oh,
system.
And
agree,
hold on.
but-
And what did MLB do? They punished the teams that were tanking to get the better prospects by putting in the lottery.
Mhm.
So so they took away the first overall pick for the worst team. So
I mean, while I kind of see what you're saying with that, I do still think a draft lottery is good in a sense, but like,
but it's a punishment
You
for
could get,
teams
rid,
I
you
to
could get rid
tank.
of the draft lottery if you had a floor.
yeah, I agree. I also don't think a team should do what the White Sox did and set a, like. Not that I don't know if they were trying to tank, but I mean
That's the
sure did
problem.
a
I don't
damn
think
good
they were.
job.
We could tell from the last week of the season they weren't trying to.
Yeah. I just feel like there's some good and bad, but yeah, like it's hard. It is very, very hard to replicate what the Orioles did and be as successful as they've been. And
It
you
100% is
you have
because
20 other
you
teams
have-
that are trying to do that.
Yes, and that's why that's the issue is that you punished the smaller market teams in the way they can make it. You gave their unfair advantage. You took away. You gave, but meanwhile, the big market teams still have this unfair advantage of one, the fact there's no salary cap, and two, the fact that you're not enforcing this luxury tax.
Right.
So
Sorry,
you
go ahead.
have you have this in you took away that unfair advantage because you're not going to see the Dodgers tank. You're just not. You're not going to see the Yankees tank. You would see the Orioles. You saw the Orioles do it. You would see the Pirates do it. You would see the White Sox do it. Like you would see these smaller market teams do it because they have to get the best draft picks they can because otherwise they're going to be set back for. Otherwise, no, not even be set back. They're just going to be spinning their wheels for the next 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's
How much is baseball also a matter of how well you develop these players? Because, I mean, we know that
It depends on the market.
definitely when it comes to a first round, it's a first round and everyone tries to get the best person. But as we know from years past, not always the number one draft picks for a team. I'm not saying number one overalls in this case. Don't always pan out. And sometimes it's your 5th round. It could even be your 10th or 20th round person is the one that pans out. And you're drafting far less than what you used to because the draft will go on forever. And I think now it's like, what, 25, 40 rounds or something?
No, it's not 40.
Not that little, but
They significantly lowered it.
They significantly dropped it because it used to be like, here's like round like whatever, like 2 weeks later it felt like. So
yeah.
But still
it's a crapshoot.
I mean, how much of it is also just a team developing, having a good scouting system and developing players? Because I mean, there's thousands of people out there that want to play baseball. A couple hundred of them probably could actually get drafted, and a handful of those are what we say would be really good players, but there's probably a bunch of them that are kind of on that teetering line. And how much of it is a team that or a player, a prospect that gets drafted by a team that has a good system for developing players. It always seems like the Astros would develop a pitcher regardless of whoever they got. You just knew that they're going to have good pitching in their system. Dodgers for a while it seemed like good hitting. Like there's just something about teams that regardless of where they're picking, in the draft. They're going to develop those players or develop enough players that can make some type of like meaningful impact later in their careers, a few years later. And there's some teams where if they draft the top overall pick and they get like 2 compensation picks or whatever, and those players we just know won't pan out because the organization sucks at developing. Like, how much of it is developing among as also having a good pick slot?
Oh,
it really falls down to importance.
No, developing in baseball is everything. If you're
It
talking
is
about
basically having the worst record gives you the chance of getting the best overall person. Outside of like the top 10 picks, everything is all about development for baseball. Feels
yeah,
like. That
yes.
or the 5 years later where we realize that Mike Trout was picked 27th and all these other teams suck for not picking him.
Yeah. Look, I think baseball over any other sport has always been like that, especially when you had as many rounds as you did. But I mean, in a lot of ways, outside of this is probably not a good example because I mean we're seeing Paul Skeens got picked number 1. And you're
Pirates. I knew it.
Listen, you're seeing like how that paid out, but for a lot of the drafts outside of a few picks, it doesn't mean shit. Like you really don't. It is all about development. Now, what I kind of thought you were going toward, and what I'm going to go to now, is it still becomes a problem for these teams because it doesn't really matter how well you develop players when they are no longer under team control. It is really hard to retain these players if there's still no. If a team can just swoop in that has a ton of money and kind of take these players from you, like that's why it's so hard for these small market teams. I feel like not only do you have to be really really good with the picks you have, but you have to be efficient and like be successful fairly quickly. Like there's no waiting around. I feel like it's hard to just sit around and develop players because like you kind of have to do with what you have quicker than teams that just have more money than you, because again, if a player pans out later down the line and he's no longer under your control, a team can just come in and pay more than you're willing to pay, and then that's
I wish I had something that was like right now, like look at like
there's realistically
whatever the tier list would be is like like an all-star player or whatever in baseball history, and how often those players actually stay with the team that they drafted with.
Well, you
Just
can't
it feels
do
like more often
baseball
to me
history. You can only really go
That's right.
back to the birth of free agency, and if you're going to do that tier list, because
whatever,
of free agency not being a thing till like the 70s.
that's
Anyway.
fine. I don't really give two.
I mean,
the point is,
I just feel like there's if you really looked, I feel like you have the players that do have a 15 to 20-year career with one team, or a team that stays with said team once they hit free agency. But I feel like more often than not, the player will go find a different team and go wherever the money is, regardless of that team. Like, I don't know, or they'll be on the good team. I guess the way I should be phrasing it is looking at it from a big market team standpoint, and do they stay or do they leave? Not just anyone. And I still feel like that's not common that they stay even.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I think what it adds up to is these smaller market teams have to do so much more, and that's kind of the point that is being made here. It's like
a different game.
That's the thing. I mean,
it's an unfair game.
It is completely different. Kind of, I guess we can start to wrap this up a little bit. I do have 2 questions that we sort of touched on, but let's put a bow on it. Is it if there's no salary cap, or actually let me start with this question. Should there be more emphasis on a salary cap or a salary floor? I know we kind of touched on this, but let's put a bow on it because I feel like as much as it's great to have a salary cap and punish teams for spending loads of money, I think you should also punish teams like, here we go, the Pirates or the Athletics that refuse to spend money, and the owners. And should there be penalties for teams that refuse to spend money over years and years and years. Will, I'll go to you first. Sorry.
It's because you went on and on. You're talking about what's more important between the ceiling or the floor.
Yeah,
right?
what's more important, the ceiling or the floor, and should teams that don't spend money get punished?
If your argument is about whether things should be more even, then I feel like initially then you would probably lean towards lowering the cap, because then those teams can't spend as much on other players and other teams can sign them. But I think it's a little more important. I mean, they're connected is the hard part. I feel like to me it's slightly more important for the floor, only because of how I don't feel like if a cap was put in place, it's going to be as low as people would think. It's still going to be in a range where 3/4 of the teams that are paying over 200 million to players are still going to be able to stick with their exact plan. It's only going to affect a handful, but there are tons of teams that we know don't pay enough because either greedy owners don't want to spend the money, or they're trying to tank a season so that they could try to get a good lottery slot. The floor would force them to try to be a bit more competitive. You might get small market teams that try to be more like the Rays and the Tigers, but it would at least kind of force the creative juices going to create a more competitive team. But in the end, I feel like it's hard to say what, because they're so intertwined, because the floor is going to be created based on what the ceiling is. And so it's kind of finding the right marriage between the two.
What about you, John?
I think Will's last sentence just summed it all up on my answer. I would say they're both equally as important. I mean, you have to have balance. That's the thing. And
so the balance is that I have the big market team, so therefore the floor is more important, and you're the low market team, so therefore the cap is more important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
that's the balance. That's how we fight it out.
Well, that's the real trick, isn't it? And that's the thing, is that it has to be balanced.
The final solution, I think, is that penalties have to be harsher, regardless of what avenue you go.
Well, I think that's yeah.
Regardless if you put a cap in or not, you just got to have harsher penalties. What they have right now, is it enough? Probably not. Won't know for a handful more years, but that's
what is even the
penalty. If it doesn't work out, then they have to. It's about how much they get taxed for each amount over a certain. Once they reach tiers, the percentage increases on how much over a certain point they are, and then that builds on one another as the years go on, as they remain over the luxury tax. So it increases percentage wise and it accrues over time. They basically need to go below the luxury tax for a whole year to reset it.
But that basically doesn't matter for like the Yankees and the Dodgers, who can continue to pay that.
Well, so what I wish I had in front of me, and I can't find the link, which is a shame, is I saw something within the last week or two that was comparing how much teams spent versus how much they earned that year. Every team in baseball could have spent basically 100 to 150 million on players if they wanted to. It's kind of what the document made it seem like, because everyone had earned enough where they could put that much towards paying players, and therefore if they had brought in more players, they probably brought in more revenue, and so on and so forth. For example, the Phillies spent about just shy of 250 million this past year. I think they brought in over 400 million last year through all other expenses. So yes, a team like that, and then you say, oh, you have to pay 80 million in taxes to them, where you have that bridge. It doesn't matter. So money is a hard thing to truly gauge for the teams as true punishment, because the teams that will go over it are the ones that can afford to go over it.
Right. But that, again, that asks the question of, like, I feel like there should be some system if teams are not spending money year after year. Like, look, I'm I'm gonna go on about the Pirates, because it really has been a discussion for a while amongst Pirates fans.
Draft picks are the things that is the way to go. That's the short answer to cover both ends. You affect draft picks.
But the draft doesn't matter for big market teams.
The draft actually, I mean, the draft matters for everyone, and that's always been the penalty. So.
It doesn't
Yan-
matter for
Yan-
the
Yankees
Dodgers and the
drafted
Yankees.
Yankees drafted Judge in the free agent draft.
I will say that there is one caveat to the draft being important for these big market teams is they then have ammo for trading for established players, which I feel like, if they draft a prospect who does well in the minor leagues, they then have ammo to trade. So
I
it
also
does,
think we've
it does,
agreed on the past, though, is as much as a team can pay to field 9 guys and whatever, it's the team that does the hybrid of both in the end that we think actually is the better overall team and wins it all. I don't know of us ever really talking about teams in the past where we said, oh, they threw all this money, they threw money at their problems and therefore they solved it. No, the answer is they threw money at their problems because they didn't know that's what they had to do and they couldn't field the teams. No,
yeah.
we've said people can throw money at them, but never have I felt like we said in the past that therefore that is the answer. It's always, you got to look at a combination of the ingrown talent and the talent that they buy. Eventually the buying talent's is always older, and that's gonna bite you in the butt after about 5 years.
Yeah. I don't
mean,
know.
couldn't you make the argument that's what the Dodgers just did?
But the Dodgers, as I told you, a lot of that was still they had stuff built in through players they brought up through the system in certain parts. There are definitely a handful of players that you can say did it. And the fact that they started deferring it is probably where they went a player or two over what would have been expected. But I mean, in general, they still have a combination of ingrown talent and talent that they've bought.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to agree with you, but I do feel like I lean on the side of like some teams can, it does feel like, kind of throw money at it, and that's how it works, but you do have to have a balance. But I don't know. I mean, I just feel like
I think honestly, we're talking in circles here because Tyler, you and I are small market team fans. He's a big market team fan.
I
and
mean,
that's
we are, but
what it comes down to.
And my team throws money at the problems, and we don't have a damn ring.
We don't have money to throw at the problems.
I mean, we are talking about in circles, but the point I was trying to get to with the
That's
Pirates,
just what baseball is. It's a loop. It's an endless loop you can't get out of right now.
Yeah, but here's where I'll argue this.
So we're in a paradox. Got it.
Yes.
While I'll say Pittsburgh is definitely not a big market team and definitely not a medium market team,
but it's the oldest franchise.
Listen,
it's historic.
This is what I'm getting to. They should be spending more money than they do every year. And there's been a lot of discussion within Pirates fans that, Bob Nutting has ruined this team. He refuses to spend money.
Yes.
So, I feel like, and look, I'm talking about the Pirates. I'm sure other fans for other teams will say the same thing about their teams, but I'm going with what I know. And I really think there should be like a punishment system of if teams are intentionally, and I'm saying like this either comes in the form of a salary cap floor, or it's just kind of like how they look at it, because obviously the Pirates have done some shady stuff too. I was surprised we brought up Paul Skeens when they did, because now he has one less year of arbitration, but or team control, but
that's not shady. That's just dumb.
But like,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying though? Like the Pirates are not as small market as they are made out to be. So I feel like there should be something in place where like, all right, you get one strike if we feel that you've done it, and there's some punishment. You get two, whatever, blah blah.
Ooh,
Bro,
you get a slap on the wrist.
by ultimate, like by a certain point, I feel like the league should be like, no, you gotta fucking sell the team. This is ridiculous. Like I feel like it's maybe it's unrealistic, but like I feel like there's
you just got to be really severe.
There is some owners that are not in it for the right reasons, and that's also part of the issue of why that there is a competitive imbalance, because as much as we have these teams up here that are spending all this money, there's people in it just to get by and make money. They don't care about championships. I refuse to believe whatever these owners say. Oh, we're in it for obviously for success and championships. Bullshit, man. Spend some money and like again, talking about the Pirates. What's the biggest free agent signing they've had in the last 20 years prior to like last season, like Francisco Liriano, like come on. And that was like a $10 million signing. Like this is where I get all fed up because as much as we need a salary cap, we need some owners that are gonna to step up and make a play here. And regardless, I feel like obviously the moral of the story is for baseball to be better and more competitive and maybe more appealing to the casual fan, something has to be done, regardless if it's a salary cap, if it's more punishments. But something has to be done to even the playing field because it is out of control. And look, when everybody's seen that Blake Snell notification come across their phone, we all had the same reaction. Are you kidding me? It had to be the Dodgers. Like this is what baseball's become, man.
No, that wasn't what I thought.
I did
Well,
this. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did this.
exactly.
You're idiots.
Before we wrap up the show, I will ask because Will kind of gave me a tidbit before. Any
Good.
other?
I thought you forgot.
I didn't. I didn't. Any other options outside of a salary cap for how you could make
This is
work?
one thing I've toyed around with before as to whether or not I think it's even realistic enough to consider. Instead of a salary cap, it's whether you put limits on how many players of a certain salary range a team can have on their team. So, for example, like saying you can have only one player on your team that makes 40 million or more. You can only have like 3 players on your team that make 30 million or more. If one of them's the 40 million person, and kind of a tier system like that. So like if you take, I've said this before, pertaining to if the Yankees re-sign Soto, is under this system because Judge makes over 40 million, they could only re-sign Soto if he makes less than 40 million a year. You have the team like the Dodgers where you have what, like Mookie Betts making 30 something. Um
Well, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm like, well, this is where deferred contracts would go out of control. Like,
yes, but the thing still goes. So the same goes if for when it comes to like 20 million, like you can only have 5 20 million plus contracts or whatever, and that includes the 30 million and the 40 million people. So the deferred contracts could work, but there's still like the idea is that there is a certain amount that you can only have, because the Dodgers, I bet you could think of, they probably have what, 7 players or something that they're probably paying 20 million or more in some capacity with right now. And so that would limit how much they could have there. And the idea is just of a certain type of player. And in the end, I still think the players are going to go where the money is most of the time. And that may branch into other possibilities. And so just the idea of that, is that even a possibility to think of? The numbers I thrown out for how many in each category is all just spitballing. Nothing was set, but just the idea of capping how many contracts or how many players under certain types of contract you can have on your team.
The problem with it, as much as I love the model, it goes back to the same thing. As much as we need the top teams to participate in this, we need the bottom teams to participate in this because at some point we're gonna run out of, like, say, all right, these teams have all their spots filled, and we still got this player out here who definitely deserves more than $20 million. Then these lower tier teams are gonna have to, basically fork out money, and I just don't see that happening. The other thing too is,
So
There's
you would
also
say
the
do that
players'
with like a
union.
combination
right?
of like
Oh,
a salary cap or something.
right, and the play, like, this would dictate the player, the sorry, cost control for players to a crazy rate, which that would never happen. I don't hate the idea. It's just the problem is I feel like you got to have more than a few teams participate or have more teams affected than what you ultimately get. And yeah, I don't know. I also just kind of thought of something now, and again, I don't think it's realistic. It would never be done. But I'm almost like, hey, if baseball ever got the wits end and really needed a solution, the MLS has something basically that you have to have a certain amount of homegrown players in your team. Um it's a requirement. You can bring in as many other people for. There is some financial restrictions, but you can bring in other people. But you have to have, you know, whatever, 3 homegrown players in your team. Like if the MLB did
Boy,
something
if
like
MLB
that,
was that, nothing would change.
For any of you people who enjoy coach sim games like Football
We don't,
Manager or Out of the Park baseball or franchise hockey, highly recommend if you want to challenge yourself and possibly be on suicide watch by the end of the whole experiment. Play Football Manager and start with an MLS save and try to build a team for the. It's impossible.
Well, while I agree, because there is a lot of teams that have that homegrown, and this is again where it's tough because baseball is different in a way of how obviously you're implementing players into a lineup on a daily basis and stuff like that. But I don't know, man. Again, something has to be done. Like it just I feel like again the Dodgers are kind of opening the door for some other teams to start doing some stuff that they're doing. And I just think at some point it's going to get to a breaking point. I think if that's from the players, if that's from teams, that's from fans.
People are just going to suck up the next decade and accept the fact that after that, for another decade, the Dodgers will be poop, and that's how they bounce out.
I mean,
I don't think they're going to be. I think they're going to continue this model until
$100 million in debt.
Yeah, someone's not going to give a shit.
Is it yours or is it your kids or is it your grandkids or is it
the model's not going to work when you're doing it now? Do you know how much deferred money they're going to owe after all this is over? It's going to be brutal for them.
I was going to say they already are going to owe like $100 million to like 3 players in the next after what 2032 or something 2033. Yeah.
They're going to make the Mets look like kings with that Bobby Vanilla contract with how much deferred money they're going to be paying players. I think something has to be done. And
hey, we said it before. As long as they get 4 rings, it'll be all worth it.
Yeah,
they got their 1 ring and they're going to be happy with it.
I just feel like baseball is too traditional.
Hot start.
For too traditional to change. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. Below.
Or don't because we have very bad decisions.
Look at this. Look at this. I'm trying to be a host.
Look, we're not your dads. We can't tell you what to do.
Listen, whenever I talk, you know it's important.
Hey, we don't care.
Shut up.
DMs on all BLB accounts are open. I want a Dodgers fan on here, and I want to just have a chat. And
I have a coworker.
If you listen, if you are a Dodgers fan and you can prove that you've been a fan since before this current era of the Dodgers, I don't know how that would happen, but and you want to be on the show and get grilled for an hour about why you're wrong. Listen, I would love
why you're wrong.
I would love in a perfect world if there was a Dodgers fan who had even realized that it's kind of ridiculous where they're at. But I know most of them don't. But listen, my first preference, a Dodgers fan who doesn't have their head in their own ass and can come and actually have a conversation about this. My second option is a Dodgers fan who thinks everything is all swell and good, and then we just sit here and grill them for an hour and change.
I think now that
my other caveat is
cult tattoo on your backside.
Here's my other caveat. You must have more than 1 Dodger hat in your collection.
And
it can't be
jersey that's not.
It can't be a black version of the hat. It has to be the true Dodger blue. And you have to know who was on the roster, who was the famous pitcher on the 1955 World Series champions. Not 55, 65. Excuse me. World Series champions, all right?
Look, I think that now that the Dodgers have their championship, that's not being considered by the rest of the league as a Mickey Mouse ring. I knew you were gonna have something to say about that. I think they're even. I think they're even more realizing like, yeah, this is crazy what we're doing right now. So regardless, let us know your thoughts because I think this is gonna be a talking point that will continue with baseball until the end of time.
The Wolf of Wall Street, the Wolf of Los Angeles.
If we
have this conversation again, it'll be after we figure out who fills Rob Manfred's shoes in 2029.
Oh, that'll be a great conversation.
Robbie Man, come and talk to us.
Let's be honest.
Yeah,
talk to us.
We know you're watching. Let us let us talk to you. And of course, follow us on our socials. Rob Manford, BLB.
On our what? Hold on.
On
Hold
our
on.
socials.
Stumbled there.
I'm trying to get out of here, boys. BL _breakdowns
Well,
on
then
Twitter.
you
We don't
just say
wanna go.
peace,
Big
love,
League
and
breakdowns
see you
everywhere
later.
else. Excuse me. And we will see you later.
Wear your seatbelt.
No.